Good evening, everyone. This is Thad from the Reference and Readers Advisory Department, Rawlings Library in Pueblo, Colorado. And um, thanks for joining me for a little bit of a wok cooking or food time until I can come up with a better name for this. But anyways, uh, so have done a heavy focus on wok cooking with these videos, and that's going to continue. Um, what I wanted to do as well is kind of base the recipe off of material in our collection. And so this evening, we'll be doing a sesame chicken, which is a good hot dish if you're looking to stay cozy. And as we all know right now, it's quite chilly outside. And I made this Tuesday night when it started snowing, and it was just what the doctor ordered. But this is the book here. It's Martin Yan's Chinatown Cooking, and he has a pretty basic recipe for sweet and sour pork in here. Um, see if I can find it. I had it bookmarked, but I think I took my bookmark out for whatever reason. Because I do want to, I'm going to kind of read some of the recipe as I show you the steps for making this dish. But this is a pretty standard dish. Really any Chinese food restaurant you go to, you're going to find this. And I kind of made my own little tweaks. I didn't 100% follow the recipe, but pretty close, especially since I'd never made it before. But this is on page 251, and this is just an item that, once again, we have in our collection that's available for checkout. And it includes a lot of really neat kind of basic recipes. But let's go ahead and switch over and start diving into the recipe itself. So this recipe calls for, and I'll kind of go item by item with each step that I show you here. So for the marinade, or essentially this is the breading and the batter for the pork. And so about half a cup of cornstarch, but since I'm using more pork than what the recipe called for here, I think this called for about 3/4 of a pound of just kind of diced, cut up pork, and I probably have closer to a pound, so a little more cornstarch. And then you want to put an egg in there, and I should have beaten the egg before I put it in the cornstarch, and that kind of caused me to have to add more egg and more cornstarch. But the finished product, I wasn't upset with how it turned out, but and that cornstarch just kind of flying all over the place. So yeah, I did grab a second egg, and what I probably should have done is just add a little water instead, but it would have made it less lumpy and maybe a little easier to spread and marinate the pork in. But just want to give that a good mix so it's pretty, it is as well put together as it can be. And I think I at this point decided the whisk wasn't cutting it, and so I think I'm gonna make a utensil change here in a second, and yeah, kind of get everything out of there that I can, and then just go with the fork and finish mixing that with the fork. So it's a very yellow batter for sweet and sour pork, and yeah, adding a little more cornstarch, probably a little too much, but it's okay. And then just continue to mix that and blend it, and as the cornstarch is flying all over the place, and as you can see, it's kind of flying into the wok a little bit, and so it's almost like a paste almost. And you probably, I think for the future, I'll probably add a little water to this just so it's not so pasty. And now I'm going to grab the pork. And I find when doing this kind of dish, I've made sesame chicken before, and I find it's easiest to um, mix it by hand, and that kind of helps to get everything as well coated as it can be. I think taking a little out, I add back to my sleeve of pork to save for future dishes. So that's about, I think roughly about a pound of pork there. Maybe a little more than a pound. I know the sleeve of pork I bought said it was a little over 6.5 pounds, so it may be closer to a pound and a quarter of pork. But yeah, it's real pasty on that pork. Kind of a little tricky to mix, so I think adding water next time, just a little bit, will kind of loosen that up a little bit. All right, and now we will go to the next step, which is frying. All right, and so I've already had the oil sitting in my wok for a little bit and starting to heat up. And usually want to put enough oil in your wok so it's about 2 inches deep roughly. I probably had it more, about 1.5 inches, but you saw that skewer there, and the purpose of that, that's a good trick for seeing if your let's go back real quick to see if your oil's ready to for frying, and you can see kind of little pieces of the cornstarch from before in there. But anyways, you kind of see that bubbling there, and that's a good indicator that the oil's hot and ready to fry things. And so, yeah, I'll read what he has in here. He says, pour enough oil into a deep skillet, or in this case, a wok, to come to a depth of 2 inches. Heat over medium high to 360 degrees Fahrenheit. Deep fry the pork a few pieces at a time, turning occasionally until golden brown, 3 to 4 minutes. Scoop the pork from the oil with a slotted spoon and drain on paper towels. Reserve the oil. And so put a little bit more than a few pieces at a time. But so this, I ended up frying 3 different batches of pork, but I just wanted to put enough in there so it kind of hit all sides of the wok, but nothing was overlapping or stacked on each other. And once I got all the pork in there, I went 4 minutes. I set the timer on my stove and let this go for 4 minutes. And see, I will speed that up a little bit so we don't have to watch the full 4 minutes of frying. We'll just watch, cut it in half and watch 2 minutes of frying. But yeah, just mixing that around, and the oil's deep enough to where it's not sticking to the bottom, so I don't really have to worry about that. And just kind of moving the pieces around, taking them out, flipping them over, making sure everything gets fried evenly, and most importantly, making sure that the meat's cooking all the way through. Because there's nothing more disheartening than you have a bite of something fried and it looks delicious, and then you take a bite out of it and it's not cooked all the way through, and that's not a fun experience. But yeah, just continuing to just kind of push the pieces of pork around, in the oil. And I don't remember if I mentioned, but I'm just showing one of the batches of pork. I didn't film all three batches of it frying. I have a pretty bright light on this, so it's kind of hard to see it getting that golden brown color. And this was definitely a little lighter, and that may have been because of all the egg. Um, so it's probably more of a like golden yellow than a golden brown. But yeah, as start to move the skimmer through there, and you kind of feel the. Um, you can tell when you're pushing it around. You can feel the pieces of pork get a little crispy, and so just continue moving that around. And I just kept going until my um, the timer on my stove alerted me that it's been 4 minutes. And so now what I'm doing here is I brought over a pot. So instead of the paper towels, I have a pot with a um, uh, little drain thing there that I also use for like steaming vegetables. But it's also perfect if you're draining fried items. And one thing I wanted to mention too is um, I then the pot underneath where that pork is, um, the I then put the oil from the wok in there. And so now here in the next video, we're going to start assembling the dish. And so I've since removed all the oil, and you kind of see still specks of the fried cornstarch. But just take a ladle of some of the oil, and I think I forgot to mention I'm using olive oil here. Um, I think canola and vegetable are usually the standards for this kind of dish. So now what I'm doing, I had prepared some diced onion, um, some chopped up garlic, and oh, I don't want the pepper in there quite yet, but we'll come to that. But what we're adding here is, and this recipe calls for vegetable oil, but and I kind of eyeball these measurements, but it says roughly about half teaspoon minced garlic, half teaspoon minced ginger, half green bell pepper, uh, half red bell pepper, but I just went ahead and just did one green pepper, and then half a yellow onion, but I did kind of one whole smaller onion. Um, and then just start to mix this around. And as it says here, heat a wok over high heat until hot. Add 1 tablespoon of the reserved oil and swirl to coat the sides. Add the garlic and ginger and stir fry until fragrant, roughly about 20 seconds. I probably went a little longer than that. I seem to always go a little longer. And some of my pieces of onion are a little uneven there. And they do say for wok cooking, you want to try and have your um, the consistency of sized pieces of vegetable. You want it to be about the same. It just helps things cook a little more evenly. Pepper's pretty even here, and so now I'm just going to start tossing the pepper in. And yeah, the smell of onions, garlic, ginger, and bell pepper in a wok. That's one of my favorite smells. It really makes the kitchen smell good. And just kind of keep mixing that and allow the vegetables to soften. Kind of up to the side, I have my pork sitting up there. Um, and so now what I'm doing is I'm getting my sweet and sour sauce. Um, it says use about half a cup of sweet and sour sauce, and I used sweet chili sauce instead. Um, yeah, just mixing that a little more. Just kind of give it a light toss. And so then, yeah, add the bell peppers, onions, stir fry until tender crisp, roughly about 2 to 3 minutes. Um, and then you'll pour your sauce in. And you can make your own sauce if you want. And um, Martin Yan he actually has a recipe attached here if you want to make your own sweet and sour sauce. And had I had more energy, I probably would have gone that route. And I probably put way too much sauce in it, just kind of dumped out of the bottle. Um, but I'll read to you his recipe for the sauce. He says whisk 3/4 of a cup of ketchup, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 3 tablespoons of rice vinegar, 2 tablespoons of fresh lime juice, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, and 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce in a bowl and mix until the sugar is dissolved. And he said that makes about 1 cup of sauce. And he says it'll keep in the fridge for about 2 weeks. Um, but anyways, now what I've done is I've added the pork, and then I added a can of um, pineapple chunks. And now we'll just start mixing everything together. And there's a lot in the wok here, and um, trained chefs could probably flip this with ease, but yeah, I don't have that confidence, so I just kind of kept mixing it until all that sauce coated everything. Yeah, hot wok cooking when it's cold is it's an A+ situation. All right, and so now one final video, and this video is just the finished product. And I just after I finished the sweet and sour pork, I quickly made some well, the whole time I had some rice in my steamer going, and then just made some quick fried rice with some egg and put some of the sweet and sour pork on top of that, and made for a pretty tasty dinner on a really cold, snowy night. All right. So that right there's sweet and sour pork. If you want to try and make that at home. Once again, it comes from this book, Martin Yan's Chinatown Cooking. I'm going to go ahead and once I'm done with this program, I'm going to go ahead and return it, so that's available if anyone wants to check it out. Once again, as a reminder, we are doing the Winter of Reading right now, and if you've filled out one of our bingo boards, and as we start to kind of slowly ramp up in-person programming again, you can either mark that in-person program or watching one of these virtual programs as one of the marks on your box on the bingo board. But thank you for joining me tonight. Yeah, if you're looking for a good dish to try when it's cold, I would recommend this. And once again, we have this and many other great cookbooks that you can find many great recipes of all different types of cooking. And I'd recommend checking some of those out. But thanks again for joining me tonight, and take care, everybody.